Article 5. Mr. LeBeau?
I move the printed motion under Article 5.
The printed motion under Article 5 has been moved and seconded. This article proposes two actions. First, to transfer approximately 32,000 square feet of land within the town-owned property at 20 Centec Boulevard, known as Block 4000, to Selco for municipal light and cable operations, and second, to authorize the selectmen to convey a perpetual easement to Eversource Energy, its successors and assigns, for the installation and maintenance of utilities on, over, under, and across the Block 4000 property, all as described in the manager's August 23rd memorandum. Finance Committee recommendation?
Mr. Moderator, the Finance Committee unanimously recommends Article 5 for approval.
And Mr. Mizikar, do you want to provide us with a brief explanation?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Your brief explanation covered the vast majority of my comments. The only thing that I wanted to touch on regarding the second aspect of the motion is that these subsurface utilities could be run through Centec Boulevard. However, the approach that we're taking by asking town meeting to grant the Board of Selectmen the ability to enter into or establish an easement or grant an easement to Eversource would prevent the disturbance of the roadway and the additional costs that are associated with that method of running those underground utilities. And I would suggest or ask the moderator to have Mr. Hale provide any further explanation that he sees is necessary.
Mr. Hale. Selco General Manager Michael Hale. I take it we're going to have a little AV action here, so let's
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
clear the stage. Anyone who would like to leave the stage.
I have a very brief PowerPoint. Again, following up on what the town manager commented on, this article is really about the granting of an easement to it seems, in the last couple of weeks in the community, to some, it has turned into a discussion on energy and environmental policy, which it was never intended to be. It is simply a request for an easement. So I'd like to just spend a couple minutes going through what this is all about, and then I have additional slides which I'll save but not show unless requested by town meeting if we get into a discussion on policy. So the purpose of this article is really twofold. The first part of the article would allow Selco to run a second pole line, either on utility poles or through underground conduit, out of the Centec substation that was constructed a few years ago. Right now, all the circuits, distribution circuits that feed the parts of the community that are connected to this new substation come out of the station and run along the pole lines that were installed along Centec Boulevard. Eventually, there could be a time when there is not enough room on those poles to feed the amount of circuits from this substation. So this easement would provide a second means of egress for which we could take circuits that would come out of Centec and perhaps when they get to Route 20 along this route would turn left, and those that come out and onto Centec Boulevard could go straight across Cherry Street or turn right. The second part of the article focuses on the extension of the residential gas line that feeds Cherry Hill Drive and 3 homes on Cherry Street extension. There is a portion of Cherry Street that runs, it's not in a straight line. The north part of Cherry Street, north of Route 20, is at the signalized intersection, but there is an additional part of Cherry Street that runs closer to Hebert's Candy, southerly towards the Centec substation. It feeds 3 homes on Cherry Street extended, and then it goes a little bit further down a dirt road where Cherry Street was eventually abandoned, and then it becomes pretty much a path that's a right-of-way to the Centex substation. So I can show you that on a map with, if this works, yeah. So here's the substation right here. Right now the circuits come out onto Centec Boulevard and go north up to Route 20. This would allow us the second point of egress from the substation through this right-of-way up and connect to where Cherry Street dead ends and up onto Route 20. This slide here shows just an illustrative, for illustrative purposes, where the closest neighbor would be, and it's about 912 feet from the Centex substation on Stony Hill Road. And this is what we intend to do. We intend to install a small 2.5 megawatt gas-fired generator for the purposes of shaving our peak load during peak hours. Selco pays a premium during peak hours for its power, and this is intended to reduce costs to all the ratepayers, both commercial and residential. I think just anecdotally it's worth noting that these units will only be turned on and run 16 to 20 hours per month. It's a very short time period. It is not a power plant. This is not a gas main extension. This is a residential service that's being extended to feed this generator for the purposes of saving ratepayers money. By comparison, State Street Bank has generation that's equal to 10 to 12 megawatts of capability. This is 2.5 megawatts. They have that generation for backup should their power supply source fail from both they're fed by both Selco and National Grid, and in addition, they have that much backup power for their facility. Charles River Lab also has facilities bigger or larger than what we intend to put in. And I think really this kind of summarizes it all. I'd just like to put this in perspective, what this all means. Gas is measured in therms. Gas usage is measured in a term that's therms. This, for the 16 to 20 hours, will result in 4,500 to 4,800 therms per month. Just to give you a visual in perspective, I was able to get data from a busy restaurant, probably one of the busiest, a very popular, very profitable restaurant in Worcester. And over the course of 12 months, they generate about 4,200 therms per month. So this at 4,500 to 4,800 is 10 to 15% above what a restaurant would generate in a busy location. It is not a lot of use. It is being installed for two reasons. One, additional reliability for all of our ratepayers should there be a problem in the grid, and two, for economic purposes. That's it on the easement.
Okay, folks on the stage, take your seats. Questions or comments with respect to Article 5? Do I see? Oh, I'm sorry, I see Mr. Moss. Like I said, raise your hand and then wave it.
Brian Moss, Precinct 8. So again, I want to thank Selco for bringing forward another great initiative. as far as what was discussed in the memo. In the memo that was sent to town meeting members, it discussed a peaker plant, which is is another term for a generator or a natural gas generator. A peaker plant is good for the environment. It reduces your peak load. Systems are sized for peak load, so we can reduce the size of the system. It's good for saving money. So Selco's hard work is going to save us a lot of money and help the environment by moving forward with a peaker plant. My questions arise on this specific article and the need for a gas line, albeit a regular gas line. There are other options for peaker plants. So if you look as an hour drive south of us, there's a large energy storage unit that in Norwich, Connecticut, that was put in by the energy company there to achieve the same sorts of things. Why is energy storage important? Because, as we talked about earlier, as you look at renewable energy as the first pillar, as you look at reducing your energy consumption for renewable energy to meet those needs as the second pillar, and when you get to the third pillar we've heard a lot about the sun. The sun doesn't shine all the time. And to make the grid reliable, you need energy storage. So one of the things, if I can quote the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs for Massachusetts, the state of charge showed that energy storage has the potential to be a game changer for Massachusetts with hundreds of millions of dollars of ratepayer and system benefits. So I think it's good to look at that. Should we approve this easement? It might look straightforward, but if we do business as usual, which would be to use natural gas, we don't look at things that around us, these externalities that affect us greatly. Which, if you remember, 2 years ago, I got up and was trying to say we need to do something about the climate catastrophe, the climate crisis that's going on around us. At that time, I put forward that resolution. It was 399 parts per million in carbon dioxide. It's now, this month, NASA just released it, it's 407 parts per million. So it is rising at 3 parts per million every year. So, for example, in this project, if we go with natural gas and we are dependent on fossil fuels for the next 30 years, in this example, then 3 parts per million times 30 is 90, so it'll be up to 497 parts per million, probably more because the rate goes up. So as you look at why we should maybe take an action and take a look at something different and take action tonight, is because we need to do something different than business as usual. We need to do something that looks forward and incorporates the larger picture. And I just want to leave you with a Native American quote that says, in each deliberation we should consider the next 7 generations. And so that's what I'm going to do tonight, and vote no and oppose this article. Thank you.
Further questions or comments with respect to Article 5? Mr. Gordon.
Melvin Gordon, Precinct 2. I'd like to move the question.
Gosh, I think at the last meeting I ruled a motion like that out of order where it was so early in the debate and there were so many hands in the air. Do you want to, would you do me a favor and withdraw your motion, Mr. Gordon, just so I can recognize a few other hands that are in the air? No. Okay. Okay. Well, folks, you have the authority to pass or defeat a motion to move the question, a motion for the previous question. So we'll move forward. A motion for the previous question has been made and seconded. This is a motion to end debate on the article before us. This motion is not debatable and must be voted on immediately. A vote in favor of this motion is a vote to end discussion of Article 5 and proceed to an immediate vote on the motion. A no vote is a vote to continue the discussion of Article 5. This motion requires a 2/3 vote to pass. We'll try this by a voice vote first. Would all those in favor of the motion to end debate on Article 5 please signify by saying aye? Aye. All those opposed, please signify by saying no. No. I'm not convinced that we have a 2/3 on that, so we'll have a standing vote. Will the tellers please prepare for a standing vote on the motion to end debate on Article 5? Everyone in their places? Okay, would all those in favor of the motion to end debate under Article 5 please stand and remain standing till I ask you to be seated?
$28. $26. $14. 20.
Okay, folks, you may be seated. Would all those opposed to the motion to end debate on Article 5 please stand and remain standing until I ask you to be seated?
Two. $28. 27. 18.
'Okay, you may be seated, folks. Okay, the recorded vote by the town clerk is in favor of the motion to end debate on Article 5, yes 91, no 83. The motion does not pass. We will continue with questions and comments with respect to Article 5. Mr. Tartaglia, you had your hand in the air before. Is it no longer in the air? Okay. I'm sorry. Questions or comments with respect to Article 5? Ms. Hollenbach.
Lisa Hollenbach, Precinct 9. Precinct 9 is one of the areas that this covers. The question I have is it mentions the 900 linear feet. Does that mean that nothing can be built within that range? And would this essentially kind of slow down some of the growth that people were worried about when we changed the zoning last spring?
Mr. Hales.
Well, I'll also let Kevin weigh in on that question. But the land was purchased for municipal purposes. The reason I gave you that illustration is just to show you how far away it would be from the closest abutter, not to insinuate that there wouldn't be anything else built there. That thought didn't cross my mind.
Further questions or comments with respect to Article 5? Mr. Tartaglia? Please introduce yourself.
Ben Tartaglia, Precinct 6. I've got a concern about this thing because basically this is encouraging the use of more gas, more natural gas in Shrewsbury. And Selco does have another alternative. But I have heard remarks from some people that this and the Finance Committee meeting was not the proper forum for discussing the proposed natural, I call it the Trans-Shrewsbury pipeline. It was said that the SoCo Commission is a place where this should take place. And I have a problem with that, is that this is really the only place where the town meeting can express its views. The commission it's a commission. It's appointed by the town manager, has no responsibility right directly to town meeting. They could call a public hearing, and they have public meetings, which means you can't speak unless you have permission to speak. They could call a public hearing, but in that case, those are very strictly managed. The town manager is appointed by the Board of Selectmen and is not subject to town meeting at all. Anyway, my point is that this is the only way we can affirm our decision at a previous town meeting not to have the large pipeline going through Shrewsbury. This will use more gas, and I'm concerned that in the future it may be used as another reason why to have the large gas pipeline put right through Shrewsbury. And you may have seen people have been saying that the pipeline is dead, but you may have seen the TV commercial supporting an interstate pipeline. There's big money behind this, and the Trans-Shrewsbury pipeline is not dead, but it's more in a campaign mode, in my opinion, creating buzz for support for the large pipeline. So, from that aspect, I'm opposed to this article, and I ask you to vote no, and for SoCo to use their alternative plan for the backup for the grid. Thank you. My question is, is there any way that this smaller pipeline that you want to put in would impact our other gas usage in town that would encourage us to vote or have to vote for the larger pipeline going through town?
Response, Mr. Hale?
No.
Thank you.
Just to clarify something, there already is a very substantial gas line in Route 20 that serves a great portion of the city of Worcester. This is a residential service extension. It's a 2-inch gas extension. It is not a pipeline.
I understand. May I ask a second question?
Go ahead, Mr. Tartaglia.
I'm back to, will this put more capacity needs, which would lead to more requirements to have the larger Trans-Shrewsbury pipeline put in?
In and of itself, no.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Mr. Ryan?
Bob Ryan, Precinct 7, 8 Colonial Drive. And no disrespect to anybody with the energy issues. I did attend the FinCom meeting. Through you, Mr. Moderator, to Mr. Hale, can you clarify once again? I thought your presentation said that regardless of us approving the easement tonight, this gas line is going through. You're just going to put it down Centec Boulevard at a greater cost. Is that correct?
If we put in the gas peaker, we have an alternative route down Apple Lane and then south along Centec Boulevard. It would require digging up the road. This is a straight shot through an abandoned right-of-way.
So just to clarify, no easement means this is still going through.
It could very likely go through.
Further questions or comments with respect to Article 5? Ms. Hollenbach?
Melissa Hollenbach, Precinct 9. I was just looking at the WEC webpage, and it had can explain
Can you say that
what that
once
is.
again, Missy?
I'm sorry?
What was that web page?
WEC.
That's what I thought you said.
I'm not sure what it is in there. in your industry, but that's what it looks like. It basically mentioned that they are looking into, storage panels and that type of thing, and it's kind of there. Are any other members of MWEC using this? And the other kind of part B question is, this all depends on the low cost of natural gas. I mean, right now we have, very low cost gas. If the prices were to go up, would we continue to use this generator as prices got higher? And then would we retire this section if the storage units became more economically feasible? Like, would we go with the full 20 years, or would we look at the cost?
Potentially
Mr.
could go
Hale.
30 because it's used so infrequently. So to answer your question directly, there's a couple questions in there. But if, it's always an economic calculation. If the price of gas goes up to a point when we run it, the costs exceed the benefit of the savings on the other end, no, we wouldn't run it. But we probably wouldn't remove it because it still serves as its secondary purpose to provide reliability should there be a transmission grid issue in an emergency. And I think if you have units like this that can run during those rare emergencies, the community is better off, even if it doesn't run at all for 3 years. We have units behind Home Depot that run 30 to 40 hours per year, but they're there if we need them in an emergency, and they also provide the town in any given year between $600,000 and $1.1 million in revenue to sit there idle. So there's a significant economic benefit. The second part of your question had to do with what other MWIC members are doing. And MWIC is a joint action agency comprised of 20 municipal electric utilities in Massachusetts. Its acronym stands for, I think, Mass Municipal Wholesale Electric Cooperative. And they advise on power supply issues to their members. And the Selco Commission, really looked at 2 or 3 alternatives to install one of these peaking units. One is a diesel-fired unit. You can actually get the diesel-fired unit less expensive than a gas unit, but the cost of the diesel is more expensive to run, and it's not as clean. So we opted for the gas. The third option was what Mr. Moss referenced, and that's what's becoming popular is large-scale storage of using batteries. And in 2015, Ralph Icarino, who's our electric system manager and a town meeting member, invited both Representative Kane and Secretary Beaton to go view large-scale battery storage. One of the larger production facilities in our area happens to be in Westboro. And we went down there and spent a couple hours learning a lot about that technology and what the future holds for that. We looked into that. There is one MWIC member who has installed a battery storage system. They got a very significant federal and state grant to offset the cost. The costs right now for battery storage are higher than natural gas, and that's why we opted for this solution. We are not ruling out doing battery storage in the future. In fact, we're sizing this at 2.5 megawatts, where many of our partners in the other utilities are sizing their gas units or diesel units at 5 megawatts, which is allowed. We're holding off, and we will study the battery technology as an alternative should we add another 2.5 megawatts in the future. The other thing is gas is reliable all 24 hours, and once the battery runs out, you have to recharge it. So from a reliability perspective, gas trumps battery storage.
Thank you.
Further questions and or comments with respect to Article 5? Yes, sir. Mr. Luby.
Thanks. Tom Luby from Precinct 2. I feel that natural gas is getting a rather negative opinion amongst everyone here, and I just wanted to speak a moment about the positive aspects of natural gas. It is a lot cleaner than other fuels, and it isn't, as everyone believes, contributing to climate change. Climate change is happening on its own. It is not necessarily contributing. This is not going to contribute to any warmer or cooler, depending on what year it's actually we're measuring the temperature. So, Selco has done an awesome job putting forth this effort tonight. I think we should all be in favor of it. Thanks.
Further questions or comments on Article 5? Mr. Sheikh? Stand up so the mic can come to you.
I once again move the motion.
You move the question, Mr. Sheikh? Okay. A motion for the previous question has been made and seconded. This is a motion to end debate on Article 5. Motion is not debatable and must be voted on immediately. A vote in favor of this motion is a vote to end debate and discussion on Article 5 and proceed to an immediate vote on the article. A no vote is a vote to continue the discussion of Article 5. This motion requires a majority vote, a two-thirds vote to pass. We'll try a voice vote first in accordance with our town bylaw. Will all those in favor of the motion to end debate on Article 5 please signify by saying aye? Aye. All those opposed to the motion to end debate on Article 5 please signify by saying no. No. And the motion passes by a two-thirds majority. We will now proceed to an immediate vote on the motion on the printed motion under Article 5. This motion requires a majority vote to pass. Will all those in favor of the printed motion under Article 5 please signify by saying aye? Aye. All those opposed please signify by saying no. And the motion passes by a majority vote. This concludes the business of the special town